when we do roll call and if I call on you for chat.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Steve, I can change your name.
Good evening, Ron. Always good to see you. Good evening, Arnold.
Through the chair, you're live on HCAM TV.
Thank you, Bob.
Good evening.
We got 1, 2, 3, and I make 4. Vic makes 5. I think Sam said he could not make it, if I remember seeing that email.
Curtis was just in design review board with me 10 minutes ago, and he said he was joining.
Okay, so we'll give him in a moment then. And then I think we're good to go. I think you said Sudeep has not been sworn in yet.
Yes.
Sravan, do you know if he's planning to join?
Yep, and he just signed on.
Oh, beautiful. So we'll just give Curtis a moment.
I just want to know how John keeps all these different models in his brain.
I have many tabs open on my computer.
My understanding is AI was designed looking at John's memory.
Waiting on Curtis. Sravan, welcome to the Zoning Advisory Committee. Am I pronouncing your first name correctly? Sravan? Was that a thumbs up I got? I looked down.
Hi, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, that's good. Okay. Yes.
All right, we're just waiting on one more member who we expect to come before we get rolling. We won't wait too much. We can do some intro stuff too, so we won't wait too much longer.
Right, somebody is then what do you think? What is the human right? What you're born with human rights.
All right. I'm going to start reading the script. We have enough to start, and hopefully Curtis will jump in.
Curtis just joined.
Beautiful. I will wait for just a moment then, so he doesn't feel left out. Good evening, Curtis. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, let's get this meeting going. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access this meeting via virtual means. Participants may access this meeting through the remote meeting link as posted on the meeting agenda and through the town's online calendar. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by raising their hand or otherwise signaling their intent to speak. This meeting will be recorded. Please take care to mute your microphone unless you have been recognized by the chair. Also, and John, if you haven't done this, we will be disabling the chat feature. Right now, I don't see any members of the public, but if they pop in, the chat feature is not helpful or conducive to a good Zoom meeting we found. So any and all comments will be spoken. We will now confirm attendance of all members, including a welcome to new members. Please respond with present if you are on this call. My name is Ted Barker Hook, and I am the current chair of the Zoning Advisory Committee. Ron Foisey?
Present.
Arnold Cohen?
Present.
Sam Sater? Absent. Welcome to new member Steve Conti?
Present.
Vic Prati?
Present.
There you go. Curtis Smithson?
Present.
And Sravan Krishna?
Present.
Welcome. We have one other member who has not been sworn in yet. We'll save that reveal for next time. And staff, John Gelsich.
Present.
Great. John and I were chatting ahead of time. We're hoping that this meeting will be expedient, that we can move along, but we certainly want to leave room for all discussion that feels necessary and appropriate. We have one agenda item tonight, and it is to take a look at where we are with the MBTA communities zoning and the two new ideas that we are putting together. I don't know if members have been able to watch planning board hearings. And Vic, if I misrepresent the planning board, please let me know. But both from the last time I saw the planning board discuss this, and we had several planning board members besides Vic at our last meeting, it sounds like they would be happy if we passed along one or two new proposals that they will consider alongside our original proposal, which failed at town meeting back in May. We do have two proposals that we asked John to look into, and John has some results to share with us. And then we'll get a chance to talk about them after John shares what he sees. So John, help us out.
All right. So what would be most beneficial, looking at the map first or looking at the summary table first?
My preference is always to look at the map. I'm kind of a visual map guy. I don't know if I speak for everyone, but right now you guys chose me to be chair. So it looked like Ron agreed with me. He likes the map first too.
I follow the chair.
So for those of you who might be unfamiliar with the process, this is the original map that was presented to annual town meeting that was voted down. It included the preserve, the Carbonis property, and then the two adjacent properties, and then a downtown district. So that is potentially being considered for an article before town meeting that would present two options that would allow town meeting to choose one of the two. So that's the first option.
So John, really quickly, and that is not really part of our discussion tonight, but it's helpful for context.
I mean, Zach could recommend just moving one proposal forward and not the one that was recommended for town meeting in May. So if Zach wants to move that one forward, I would recommend to planning board in your motion that you would want to move that and another one forward so that there were two. So it's clear to the planning board that would be intended.
My understanding from their discussion was they believe that one was already on the table, but if you
I don't believe that is the shared understanding of all planning board members.
Okay. All right. So we will discuss that then tonight. My apologies for misunderstanding and for interrupting.
Quite all right. Quite all right. All right. So the second one. So this is another one that was discussed at Zach. So this includes the Indian Brook condos, which are on Elm Street. And then you've got the downtown area that has been slightly expanded in order to get a little bit more land area. And you can see that over here. So the expansion really resulted in this parcel over here, some two parcels over here, and I believe that actually might be it. So just slight expansion, get a little bit more area for the consideration. And then the third proposed district or third proposed map is the Walcott Cedar Street downtown expanded district, which includes the Upper Cedar Street area, not including the preserve. So preserve has been left out, but it includes the Carbonis and the two adjacent parcels, Walcott Valley condominiums, and then the downtown area, which was expanded. So a few other parcels included in that. So those are the three proposals. And we can get into, I'm going to try and change my settings. Apologize. If I can get all these things as tabs, I can just bring it up instead of stopping sharing my screen to get every different one up. Just need to find out where that is.
Take your time, John. I need 2 more minutes so I can come back to my computer and see what's that.
You got to vamp, John, even if you can find them.
I found it, Vic.
Oh, you're faster than me.
I had a semi-unrelated question, but I know there's a proposal is it before planning now for that downtown development at the corner where the drugstore is?
Yes.
The application?
Yes.
It is under the old zoning?
Yes.
Okay. I couldn't recall whether that had moved forward or was just.
It has been applied for before the planning board. It has not gone before the planning board.
Okay.
They are scheduled for Monday, but I don't believe they are going to be able to make it. So it will likely be continued.
I think, though, that they cleared the historical commission hurdles. I believe.
Maybe, possibly. All right. Sorry, Vic. All right. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this as well, I'll try and get these in the same order that we had them in the maps. This is the summary sheet from the model that the state produced that we input the data. They give us the GIS maps or the GIS shapefiles. We take the data of the district that we're creating, take the information from their GIS shapefiles, input it into this, and then put in some other parameters to determine compliance with the bylaw or the law as they have these certain requirements. And it's district size, density across the whole district and sub-districts, and then unit capacity. So this is the original that was proposed before town meeting that was voted down and included the Upper Cedar Street district and the downtown district. You had a unit capacity of 814. We were required to have at least 750. The required density across the entire district has to be 15 units per acre. We were at 17.2. And this number, the district acreage, needs to be above 50. So we're at 58.4. This lower number does not hinder us on that account. They are just looking for the district acreage, not the district density denominator. I can go into all those details about what that is if you'd like, but I feel like this committee is pretty well versed in that information. So this is the one that was put before town meeting that was voted down.
And I would say, just to make sure, that version of Upper Cedar Street includes the preserve.
Correct.
Because I think on another summary sheet, you still call it Upper Cedar Street, but that's without the preserve.
Correct. And we can change the name of that if that would be confusing. Those were just pulled because that's where it is. Indian Brook, we meet the 15 units per acre. We meet the 50 acres, but we are 1 unit shy of the 750. So this could be easily fixed by changing one of the parameters in the zoning table to up the density in either the downtown or the, sorry, I'm trying to get to my window and my Zoom is constantly just jumping over it, not letting me click on it. So if we were to take the Indian Brook and change the parameters to modify the maximum density. So actually so as it currently stands, this summary sheet, the density for downtown is already at 17 units per acre. And then the density for Indian Brook is at 15 units per acre. So if we were to bump up the density of Indian Brook to 16 units per acre, we would be at 782 units as a unit capacity. If we were to change that back to 15 and bump downtown to 18 units per acre, we would be at 771 units.
What does the current zoning downtown allow as far as density?
So there's no density that is written into the bylaw. It's basically how you design the site and then how many units you can fit on that site at 3 floors, 3 stories.
Do you have a
there is
sense
no maximum.
what realistically that might be?
It would depend on how a site is designed.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
it's really tough to say without any kind of without this model being done.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so that is the Indian Brook option. And then looking at the Walcott, Downtown, and Upper Cedar without the preserve, you are at 754 units, 19 units per acre, and 51.7 acres. So you're just above the required amount. And let me just make sure with this one, we're at the density. So for this one, to get to 754, all districts are at 16 units per acre. So the Walcott subdistrict, the Downtown subdistrict, and the Upper Cedar Street subdistrict are all at 16 units per acre, but that gets us to 754. So if we reduce the density in one of these districts, we would fall below the unit capacity. We could lower one and raise the other, but we'd have to play with it. And I can do that now if you want.
I have a different question. We can play with it, sure. 754 meets the standard. How nervous would you be, John, with a 754, hoping that the state says, yeah, you're right, this is measured correctly? I mean, I know we're plugging in their model, but are there any variables that we might be missing?
It's hard to say. I mean, if I knew we were missing them, I would have fixed them, right?
Yeah, okay.
So, you know, with the timeline that we have, we can't send it to the state for verification. I will say we have basically just taken the one that the state said would be approvable and changed the districts.
Right.
And changed the numbers. So we haven't really made a wholesale change to the design of the model. It's just plugging in different parcels. So there is the possibility that it could be short. I would hope if we passed this version, for example, and the state did their review and it came back as non-compliant because it was 745 units, we would be able to get a stay of any kind of enforcement to then bring something before annual town meeting to modify the district in a way that would bump us above that level. If that's
For example, maybe change the density again.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
John, it's 750 units. Am I right? That's what I remember.
The requirement is 750 units.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a minimum density of 15 units per acre. We can exceed that, which sounds like what we're doing.
Yes, and in the original, so in the original, you'll see that the downtown district had a density of 12.5, but the overall density was over 15, and that's the only thing that matters. The overall density being over 15.
Right.
John, I had a question relative to this calculation and what, the state is mandating. So when we set aside and do this calculation, based on, so much acreage set aside, does that assume basically gross area that we have available? And what I'm saying is in net, depending on the conditions of the site or whatever, is it possible we could have actually much less buildable area in order to meet that standard? Or do they care one way or the other?
Yep. So that's a great question. That's actually what the district density denominator indicates. So they in their density denominator, they take out publicly owned land because you technically can't build on publicly owned land, right? Because of the hoops that they would have to jump through. Does not include state wetland areas. It does not include other environmentally protected areas. So what we'd be looking at is basically 47.2 acres of developable land, even though there's 58.4 acres of land as a whole.
Thank you.
Yep.
Could I ask, and maybe we dealt with this months ago, does that include buffer zones of wetlands? And does that only include the state's buffer zone requirements or Hopkinson's?
I would imagine it only includes the resource area and any other state regulated areas. It would not dive into the local because then that would be them creating a model for every local bylaw. Yeah.
Do you anticipate that could create a problem given that our town's conservation restrictions are stricter than the state?
No, because conservation and zoning are mutually exclusive. So state really can't pass a zoning law that requires a town to pass a zoning bylaw that also then factors in a wetland bylaw. Just like historic protections still exist under MBTA communities, wetlands protections still exist. All of those things are still applicable and exist as they are.
Okay. I just want to be sure, John, are you done with your initial, this is what we found?
Yeah, unless there's any other, I don't think there's really any reason to go through the actual language of the bylaw. It's pretty much the same. The only things that would be changing, unless Zach wanted to change them, change other things. So the only things that would be changing are the dimensional requirements for each subdistrict, the details of each subdistrict, and those types of things that are pretty easy to change out once Zach has decided. I'll probably just, if we decide on 2 different maps, I would just create 2 different bylaws that go with those 2 different maps.
Okay. So that's kind of what I thought. I just wanted to make sure we weren't cutting you off too early with questions.
Yep.
So I guess what I'm interested in hearing now, gang, is I would like to put, for now, the originally approved town meeting voted on map aside. I would love to hear discussion of pros and cons of the other 2 maps and hear what you guys think.
Through the chair?
Sure, go ahead.
I think the second option would be a good complementary option to the original one that we did, which doesn't have any of that Cedar Street parcel on it. So just the downtown section and Indian Brook. And as John suggested, tweaking one of the acreages up a little bit to get us over that 750 benchmark.
Can you share, or would you be willing to share, Ron, why you prefer that one over the Walcott Valley version?
Just differentiation between the two things. I mean, keeping option number 1, just presenting again the option that we did at the Maytown meeting, has that Upper Cedar Street portion on it.
Yep.
And the Indian Brook one with downtown does not have any of that Upper Cedar Street on it. So that's a differentiator. The third model, we've got bits of both in there.
Okay. All right.
Well, Chair, just want to reconfirm, do we need to have a local transportation on the areas which we allocate as MBTA? Like the Metro West bus service, which is...
Now, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but because we're an adjacent community, we don't have anything that says you must be within half a mile of the train station, nor do we have anything that says you must be on a bus service. I think our discussions have been, this is the whole letter of the law, spirit of the law, those kind of things. And I think that a lot of our discussions last winter were the idea that while we didn't want to give a green light to rapid development in addition to what we've been dealing with, generally the Zoning Advisory Committee liked the idea of, if there is going to be development, let's see if we can fit within the idea of using public transportation. And so if I could expand, while I think you remember that, Vic, for the newer members, the thought is that there is the MWRTA bus that runs through downtown. There has been discussion, I understand, and a push maybe from our rep to extend the MWRTA bus so that it goes up to the Southborough train station. That doesn't exist now, but that's been kind of part of our discussions because we understand that there is a push to do that, which would also make, if there is development downtown, fit within the spirit of the MBTA Communities Act, because it would invite public transportation use and get folks up to the train. But none of that is required, is my understanding, because we're an adjacent community. Did I do okay on that, John?
Yes, that is correct. The only thing I would add is that the bus line would not just go to Southborough, it would actually go all the way up to Littleton and then come down to Milford, from my
Oh,
understanding.
really?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
a pretty significant.
Littleton.
Yeah.
Geez. Okay.
Well, good to know.
Other comments on Indian Brook? I'm gonna, for our discussion, simplify it, Indian Brook versus Walcott Valley as the two models we're discussing now.
To the chair.
Yes, please.
So, and forgive me because I'm really trying to catch up here, but
Understand.
in making these decisions, is it our responsibility to sort of look forward in terms of these sites and their infrastructure capability, to support what we might be proposing? Or is that just assumed to be looked at, later by the various boards and so forth, to vet that out, so to speak?
As I'll try to deal with almost every answer I give, I'll give an answer and then look to John to see how I did. My understanding of our job on the Zoning Advisory Committee, especially in this case where we're trying at round 2 at an MBTA Communities Act, is to pass along to the planning board something that fulfills what they asked us to do. And what they've asked us to do is come up with an alternative to the original plan. We are supposed to do as much as we can to consider the efficacy of that plan. I think that we are in agreement with most, if not all, of the planning board in that we certainly want to be within the law. We don't want to be running against the Commonwealth's law, risk a lawsuit, risk losing funds. So that's the first barest hurdle to clear. But then beyond that, how do we do it in a way that we are not burdened with rapid development? I think generally people agree we want to do it in a way where we are not going to have a lot of more deforestation right away. So we've been only looking at already developed properties rather than finding unused woods. As far as getting as deep as wells versus town water, where electrical lines are, we know some things, especially because from our first round, we know that the sewer and water up on Upper Cedar doesn't exist right now. And so one of our discussion points when we proposed both the preserve and Carbones and the land just to the north of it was right now, they don't have water service, sewer or water pipeline. And it was our thought that that would slow development in a way that then the town could, if it does get developed, it would be down the road and we could absorb it. And it wouldn't happen right away. I don't think that for this round, we asked, what does Indian Brook have? I don't know if they're on wells or if they're on town water. I don't know about Walcott Valley either. So we're not going too deep. Ultimately, our only job is to pass something on to the planning board. We are not putting anything on the town warrant. The planning board ultimately decides what to put on the warrant. Is that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ted. Thank you.
Sure. John, was there anything you think I missed?
No, nothing you missed. I think that was a great answer. I would just also add that, because I would imagine this question is going to come up, it's not the town's responsibility to provide utilities or infrastructure to these sites to then be developed. That would lie solely with the developer and the owner of the land. So, Upper Cedar Street, if it were to be approved, the town would not have to run a water line up there for the developer. They would have to do it themselves. And so it's really just kind of what we have in terms of land, how it fits into the criteria for MBTA communities. And then if it works, then it works, and everything else is the developer's responsibility.
And even more basically, because folks outside of the committee have asked, it's also not the town's responsibility to build the apartments. That would also be a developer's responsibility to buy the land at a price they think works for them and the seller think works for them, and then put everything together. I'm still looking for thoughts and comments. Again, it's my understanding that while we may, I trust John, we maybe probably ought to vote on whether we want the planning board to still consider the first option. My understanding of their input is they don't mind 2 additional options to the first option. So if we wanted to push all 3 along, I don't think that goes against what the planning board asked for. It might be helpful to them if we decided to rank the 2 new ones. I don't know if I'm comfortable ranking all 3, but we could if we wanted to. So I'm still looking for what your thoughts are, especially on the 2 that we are now considering, not the original.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sean.
No, just looking at these plans, right? The Upper Cedars seems to make most sense because of the the MBTA transportation option closer to the train station. It looks like if that was voted down, why wouldn't? What is the logic behind the other 2 options, and what is the confidence level that wouldn't be voted down?
So here's my answer. If you're saying the new version of Upper Cedar versus the original, why offer Upper Cedar again? Because the big difference is the preserve is not in the newer version.
Okay, it's a newer version. Okay, got it. Okay.
Right. The newer version excludes the preserve. And while that wasn't the entirety of the pushback to the original plan, that was a significant portion of the pushback. It was residents of and neighbors of the preserve. There was some talk about Carbones being more developable than we or the planning board believed it to be. But really the big resistance we heard at town meeting was from the folks in the preserve. So the rethought Upper Cedar Street excludes the preserve.
Okay, thank you.
And instead puts in Walcott Valley and a slightly bigger downtown area and adjusted densities and those things. Does that help, Vic?
Yes, and just want to add, I was about to call out, but looks like Shravan and you raised the same concern which I was about to raise it right now. I was more looking at it that having the new version with the Upper Cedar Street and downtown. John, can you pull that out? 754, right? Was that the number with the? This was the one, right? Yep. I would say going with this might be more easier from my point of view. Again, we might get back to the same if we add Indian Brook, the kind of challenging answers what we have it like last time. With the preserve, we might run into the same issue with them. And the population of Indian Brook is also quite large than what we had it in the preserve. And
of course, this one could have pushback from the folks at Walcott Valley too.
That's also that. Yeah, maybe can we tweak it down, John, as you mentioned that to make these numbers work out a little bit better on this model?
I'm sorry. What?
You said we can make these numbers workable by tweaking it up and down the density and the.
Yeah. Yep. So this one is all the 3 districts are at 16 units per acre. So if we were to go to 17 for the downtown sub-district, that would give us a unit capacity of 772.
Yep, this sounds a little more comfortable and closer. High chance of approval for us from the state.
And I would guess that could be something the planning board, that's not too much homework for the planning board. We could, if we wanted to, pass this along, and then they might say, you, Vic, on the planning board, might say, guys, this seems like a good plan, but maybe we want to give ourselves a little more breathing room. Whatever we pass along, they can certainly tweak or reject. But we could tweak it now and they could tweak it back too. That's a possibility as well.
I was just more saying that if we can call it out somewhere when we present it to the planning board, so it comes up across to us. And
the Indian
the state is
Brook
forcing us, so we don't have an option rather than to just to go and get this done. So we just want to make sure what's the best we can get out of it
Okay. The Indian Brook one is the one that came up 1 unit short. And so we would have to tweak density there. I think if that was one we wanted to work on, my recommendation would be increase the density downtown, since that's already under current zoning a possibility. So that shouldn't send shockwaves if we made that one more density allowable. That's a horrible way to put it. Hopefully the Independent doesn't quote that line.
Whatever works, we just have to get it done.
My own take, for what it's worth, is if I had to choose between these two, and I know that we have the original plan, and I hear what Ron says about a second plan that is significantly different, significantly rethought. But if I had to rank the two new ones, I would prefer this one to the Indian Brook. My biggest concern with Indian Brook being part of it is there is no connection to the MBTA at all. And I fear that if there is development, that's in a section of town that is already experiencing difficult traffic. And I would see the traffic from any new development there, heading towards 110 Grill and that whole mess of traffic. I did, for discussion's sake, take a very quick look at what purchasing a unit would cost in each of the developments, Walcott Valley versus Indian Brook. In my very quick research, I found 2 properties for sale in Indian Brook. I found 2 for sale in Walcott Valley. The Indian Brook properties, each townhome is roughly $500,000, $550,000 per unit. The Walcott Valley is about $100,000 less. I don't know the total number of units in either, but I was considering that to consider, is one of them more affordable to a developer than the other? And it seems like if we are hoping for no development in the near future, Indian Brook might be a harder purchase. But I'm not a developer, but I wanted to take some of that into account. Each unit seems to be more expensive at Indian Brook. And that would be an argument for including Indian Brook if we wanted a model that does not lead to quick development. So I don't know if any of that is helpful to you, or if you have thoughts on those thoughts.
No, I agree with you. That does make sense, actually. The way mainly is the traffic. Yes, that's been a biggest pain right now with the Indian Brook side of it. Walcott Valley from a costing point of view and also proximity to the MBTA, this is more suitable, actually.
And since again, unless I'm misreading, but you haven't corrected me on this, Vic, and you've been in the planning board meetings, they are comfortable with 3 plans at this stage. But it might be helpful if we decided, here's how we would rank them. And then they can chew on that. And maybe we can give some, this is why we like this one. This is why we like this. This is why we like this.
That's right. That they were more looking for an alternative plan than the original one. So you have given more than one. That helps us a lot to further discuss it. The ranking would definitely help us, saying that, hey, this is the recommendation from Zach based on the ranking. And pretty much you'll be there and I'll be there. John will be there. If they ask why was this ranking come, one of us can always fill in that gap.
You can try to summarize
why did we rank them. So that would help them. So,
Perfect.
Through the chair?
Yes, who is that?
Ron?
Walcott Valley would be.
Oops, sorry, Ron. Go ahead, Curtis. We haven't heard from you tonight.
I was going to say that another, I guess, con or pro to the Walcott Valley would be if that bus route is expanded from Littleton to Milford, then all 3 of these would be on that bus route.
That would be true of the reconsidered Upper Cedar and downtown grouping.
Yeah, and the Walcott Valley's just a couple blocks over, so that would be walkable to catch the bus. So that might still kind of lean toward an advantage there to access to the train station, which is what this is all
Yeah.
supposed to be leaning toward.
Ron,
One of the things the planning board may want to consider is the politics of this, of whether or not it's going to be saleable at town meeting. And Ted, I think your observation about the Indian Brook condos being more expensive would put a higher burden to that being developed and probably would delay it. And I think that would be attractive to people who do not want more development in town.
I think so too. And I also think there's more units there. So while I don't know what percentage of tenants would need to agree to sell, certainly the raw number is almost certainly higher they'd have to find in order to then sell and develop it. So yeah, I don't love myself the Indian Brook in the sense of if there's development, is that a good place? I don't think so. Is it less likely to be developed? I kind of think so. And so I'm a little torn on those two. You know, are we trying to achieve smart zoning, or are we simply trying to achieve delayed development? And those two things might be in conflict.
My personal preference is we need to just be compliant and get this thing passed.
Yep. John, did I see your hand pop up?
Yeah. So just counterpoint on that argument.
Which one?
The Indian Brook versus Walcott.
Okay.
Walcott might be cheaper to develop, but Walcott Valley, under this scenario, you'd get at max, right? If a developer bought it and built as many units as possible, 237 units, whereas Indian Brook, 485.
Mm.
So it might be more expensive, but they might be able to offset that with more units.
That's a good point that I hadn't considered at all. The purchase price might be higher, but the return might make up for it and then some. That's a good point.
And organized like the Preserve did, there's many more units there to come vote against it, possibly.
That's right.
Also a good point. John, is there any chance, I know before we got started, you said you could find the number of units. Is that something you could do now, or is that a bigger homework job?
That's a question I'm gonna have to ask the assessor.
Okay. All right. So we'll put that aside and just go with, I think we're all in agreement that there seem to be more units at Indian Brook. I don't ever like putting anybody on the spot, but Arnold, I don't think we've heard much from you. Do you have any thoughts? And if you don't, that's fine.
My thought is that we should present all the plans to the planning board and give them more options. I think I tend to think that they like to have more options. You know, it's going to be their decision. There's a lot of variables in all these things, and it's really hard for me to predict, you know, I'm predicting the future and everything else, but that's what I think we ought to do. Just send them all three.
But if they wanted a ranking, do you have a thought in how you would rank at least the two new ones?
It would just be speculation and guessing if I were to do that. I can't.
Okay. All right. If you're not comfortable, that's fine. And brand new to us, Sravan, your hand is up. I don't know if you have a ranking, but feel free to speak.
So when this get presented to the town again for voting, would the town get 3 options to vote on, or would they get one selected option to vote on?
John will certainly correct any mistake again. My understanding is the thought is that we can present 2 options at town meeting. So if we were to push 3 options to the planning board, in their discussions, they would decide which to throw out, and they would bring 2 to town meeting is the hope. And my understanding is that there's discussions with town council and with the town clerk about how to do that legally and properly and cleanly.
Okay.
But it would not be 3 options at town meeting. I don't think that's being discussed.
Okay. So my ranking would be the original option as number 1.
Mm-hmm.
And the new options, right? It's either one it seems about the same to me.
It's 50-50 to you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I like the original one better.
Vic, thank you.
So Indian Brook has its own website. So I just went to their website. They have 112 units, which is split among 28 buildings. I'm just looking at their website online on this. So my ranking would be going
Does
ahead.
Walcott Valley have a website?
Yes, they do. I mean, they don't have it, but I know that I was trying to purchase whatever the available lot last time. So I know that they were around like, how many around 25, 30 or something, like individual townhomes kind of a model, which was there for Walcott. So, but it's a big lot. And, but yes, so my preference would be going with the original plan being the second option, the first being the Walcott Valley and, Upper Charles Street. I would prefer that as first option.
Okay. So you like removing the preserve and putting in Walcott Valley. That would be your favorite choice.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else want to think out loud about what else we might not be considering? Or should we try to put these in some preference as a committee vote to pass along? Last chance for fresh thoughts.
Sure.
Okay. I'm really torn about whether to include the original plan in our rankings, partly because it was our original plan and we thought it through. And at the time, we looked at the whole town and thought that was the best plan. And maybe that ought to speak for itself for the planning board to consider. We certainly, especially if John recommends it, can vote on whether we ought to have them still consider the original plan. But I think I'm leaning towards whether we choose to still consider the original plan or not, to just rank the other two options with the understanding that we believed in the original plan. That's why we pushed it along after we considered everything in town. Is there any opposition to that idea? It looks like no. Silence is assent. All right, so what I think I'd like to do is first, let's see if I can get a motion and then a vote on whether we think the planning board should keep the original plan in their consideration. John Gelsich, am I doing this right?
I think it would be cleaner to have a discussion if you want to recommend how many you want to recommend, all three, just two, original plan, and then make one motion that says that recommendation to the board.
Okay, without any ranking.
No, the ranking could be in the motion. So you could say, I would just put everything together. So I would say, for example, if you were to include all three as a recommendation, but you wanted, it seems like some people are the original plan, then Walcott, then Indian Brook. The motion would be Zach recommends planning board move forward with the three options. I don't know. We could think of something with a preference of X, Y, and Z.
Does everyone, I like John's idea, and John's got experience in these meetings. Does everyone feel comfortable in moving there now and recommending, well, first, so here's what I think I'm going to propose, but we're not voting on it yet. I will propose a motion to, or I will look for a motion to offer the planning board three options. And then we will put them in the order that we think is best, for best option to least best option. Before I even get that motion, do you guys understand what we're trying to do? It looks like yes.
Yes.
So I think I've already made the phrasing not very clear. I would like to entertain a motion to send to the planning board all three overlay maps that we're discussing tonight. And the motion will be that we recommend, I'll just throw it out, the original plan first, Walcott Valley version second, Indian Brook version third. And if that gets voted down, we can get a new motion to put them in a different order. Is that true, John? Or is that still ugly?
Yes. So I'm just writing the motion as you say it. So I've got to recommend the planning board review the 3 proposed options with the understanding that the zoning advisory committee
we don't have good names for the plans right now.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of
we'll call them the original plan, the Walcott Valley plan, and the Indian Brook plan.
I'm comfortable with that.
I'm trying to think of how we should word it, with the understanding that the zoning advisory committee prefers the original plan, then the Walcott Valley plan, then the Indian Brook plan.
John, is it prefers or recommends? I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Should it be the recommend? Zach recommends, or do you think Zach prefers? That's all. The wordings. I'm just trying.
So I'm trying to capture the 2 statements in one motion.
Right.
You're recommending all 3, but here's our preferred order.
And if that fails our vote, John, we can reshuffle them and propose a different.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So if you don't like that, feel free to say no. And if it doesn't get a majority, we'll reshuffle them, or we can go back to a discussion to see if we should be eliminating one of them. But again, I'll say I think the planning board is comfortable and happy to have 3. So, Steve?
Yeah, just for clarification, Ted. Did I misunderstand earlier that the 3 that we're proposing, is there a hybrid in there now based on what was discussed earlier? Are we taking something off the table?
So let me try. I think that what we're calling now the Walcott Valley plan is an amended version of the original, with the key change. It's not the only change, but really the most significant change is exchanging the preserve up on Upper Cedar for the Walcott Valley section. There's also some tweaking with a couple other small parcels included in downtown. And John, did you say there was some tweaking with the density as well?
Yes.
Yeah. But really the key difference is swapping the preserve for Walcott Valley.
Right.
And then the Indian Brook plan is it still has downtown. So that essentially is swapping all the Upper Cedar property for the Indian Brook property.
So, Steve, it might be easier to see it visually. So this is the plan that was put before town meeting in May. So it includes the preserve, the Carbonis and adjacent properties, and then a smaller downtown district. The Indian Brook would have the downtown district with a couple different parcels added, and then the Indian Brook would get rid of these. And then the Walcott Valley would get rid of the preserve, keep these, add Walcott Valley, and then have the same expanded downtown as the Indian Brook, but smaller than the original. So if I do that, you can kind of see where the downtown changes a little bit.
Yeah. And so, in summary for me anyway, as long as that's being defined and you're going to call it whatever it is now, I was okay with the way it was presented in terms of the ranking myself, as you outlined, Ted.
Yeah, so you've got the original, the Indian Brook, and the Walcott Valley.
Yeah.
So John, could you reread and then maybe we can get someone to make that motion?
Sure. To recommend the planning board review the 3 proposed options with the understanding that the zoning advisory committee prefers the original plan, then the Walcott Valley plan, then the Indian Brook plan.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do a roll call vote. If you agree with pushing along the 3 and you like that order of preference, you would vote yay, aye. If you don't like the 3 or don't like that order of preference, vote no, and we'll continue a discussion. Everybody
Point of
understand?
order?
Yes.
I didn't hear a motion or a second.
No, I know. I'm saying that will be the motion and that's how we'll proceed. I don't want anyone to think that this is the end of the discussion if it fails. Yeah. So I'm looking for a motion along the lines of what John just said.
Okay, so moved.
In a second?
Second.
Okay. Here comes our roll call vote.
Point
Ted
of
Barker
order.
hooked. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Could we have some discussion on the motion before we
Oh,
vote?
sure.
I wanted to second Arnold's recommendation that we put forward the first as our preference and the other two as tied. The planning board's going to have their own reasons and rationale for ranking one above the other. And it just doesn't make sense for us to get into that level of weeds at this level. So, I'm going to be voting no against this.
Okay. Any other discussion? Thank you for the point of order, Ron. We don't have many votes in the time that I've been chair, so I miss these things. Any other discussion? Ron raises a good point, and if it's convincing, feel free to vote no, and we can reshuffle. No? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Ted Barker Hook says aye to the motion. Ron?
Nay?
Arnold?
Aye.
So yes, no, yes. Steve?
Aye.
Yes. Vic?
Yes.
Curtis?
Abstain.
Okay. And Sravan? I'm sorry, Sravan?
Yeah, Shravan.
Where's the emphasis? Sravan?
Yeah, Shravan. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's not a problem at all. Either one is fine.
Your vote?
Yes.
Okay. So I think what I count is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yays, 1 nay, and 1 abstain, and the motion passes. So I think what we've just done is recommended that the planning board consider the 3 plans we've discussed tonight, and they are welcome to consider. And I can go to the meeting if you think it would be helpful, John, but maybe Vic, you can cover if they have questions about the discussion we had.
Sure.
You feel comfortable with that, Vic?
Yep, I can cover them, but
And you can always go
more
back
than
to,
welcome to join the meeting also.
what's that? I'm sorry?
I can cover if they have any questions, but you're also more than welcome to join the meeting if you have.
Okay.
time.
All right.
Yeah, through the chair. No disrespect to Vic, but my guess is, Ted, you're probably going to be asked to present at town meeting
Oh,
along
okay.
with the planning board.
Oh,
So it may
that
be
worked
worth,
so well last time.
it may be worth participating. Not
Uh,
doubting Vic's ability to communicate the discussion, but they're probably going to
Okay.
have questions for the chair.
Okay. I would certainly be tuning into that planning board meeting anyway, so it's just as easy to be on the Zoom call. They're still doing almost everything on Zoom, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So there is one detail.
John, do we need to vote on the bylaw language? Or is that something to be finished later? 'Cause
That
I feel like we
think
voted on the
I would
map.
I would consider that as part of the plan,
Okay,
because the summary that I presented to you all factors in certain parameters.
okay,
And so if you are making that decision based on those summary sheets, those factors are part of your recommendation.
okay. Okay, and maybe I should have made this clear earlier. We then just passed along the 754 unit version of the Walcott Valley, and they're welcome to tweak it to give themselves more room if they choose.
And the 749 unit version of the
Right,
Indian.
which they would have to tweak if it was one they wanted to propose.
Correct.
Okay, so I think for tonight, our work is done. Is there anything else we need to do, John?
Nope.
No, except for look for a motion to adjourn.
Question, do you know when the planning board meeting that this will be considered? Has it been scheduled yet, or will it be on the agenda for the next one, or?
It's not going to be on the agenda for the next one because that's Monday. We'll have to see what the schedule looks like. I don't know if the select board established a special town meeting date. I'd have to look and see where that is because, I mean, we're closer than 6 months as of right now, so it shouldn't really matter. But, earlier rather than later may matter if the meeting is earlier rather than later. So I I would suspect this would probably be on for the October 7th meeting.
I think with the select board, I only skimmed the last meeting, but I think they were kind of waiting for at least the planning board to get a hold of our plans before they considered what is the best date for special town meeting.
Yeah, that's not what I recommended to them.
But they may have changed their mind. At the last select board meeting, I really just kind of skimmed through it as I was on the YouTube. One other thing before getting a motion to adjourn. This is our new, with the addition of Sudeep, our new zoning advisory committee. So one of the things we'll have on the agenda for our next ZAC meeting is reorganization, discussion of chair, vice chair, those kind of things. So feel free to give that some thought before our next meeting. And then John and I will talk about other agenda items. I would love to get from John, even if we don't have actionable things yet, a discussion of the new affordable housing law, which includes ADU changes. And even if there's nothing for us to do right away, what might we be looking at down the road in that regard? But John and I will talk about it and we'll see if we can come up with some agenda besides simply reorganization and an update. Sound good, everybody? Then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I think I heard a second before the move. I think it was Vic moved and Curtis seconded is what I think I heard. All right. But,
No, it's the other way around.
oh, the other way around. Okay.
Yeah.
Want to make sure we get our minutes right. All right. Ron, adjourn?
Yeah. Yes.
Arnold,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Vic,
Yes.
Curtis,
Yes.
Sravan,
Yes.
and Ted Barker Hook is a yes. Thank you, everybody. We are done. That took us an hour. It's not so bad.
Thank
Take
you all.
care.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, John, for all your work.
No problem. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.